administration has downplayed repeated signs that migrant children are being widely exploited. I would go on record today and say it doesn't sound like just the Biden administration based on what I'm hearing in here, but Ms. Rodas, you mentioned something and it kind of it triggered a response a while ago. You said these kids are being recruited in their home country. What do you mean by that?
So, and I'd be happy to submit for the record, we have children saying that there are radio advertisements in their hometowns. So in Huehuetenango, for example, in Guatemala, they're actually advertising on the radio. Come with us. We'll give you passage. We'll give you passage to the United States. There's an example of a sponsor who currently is in Austin, Texas at this moment. He attempted to sponsor 4 children, 1 from the Pomona Fairplex Emergency Intake Site and 3 from the Pecos Emergency Intake Site, promising work to these children who are making $2.50 a day on the coffee farm he owns in Guatemala. So he lured them here. Now, fortunately, they were put into long-term care, but they are being lured here. Facebook ads and other things. Children are being lured here and then put to work here.
So it doesn't sound like they're fleeing as much as they're being baited to come here in a lot of ways from what I'm hearing. In
many ways, they're not fleeing. In many ways, I mean, let's take El Salvador, for example. No one is fleeing from Nayib Bukele. He has a very safe society right now. Yes, maybe in times past, people were fleeing El Salvador from the gangs, but sadly, the gangs have now set up operation here, and we have evidence that there are many of them who are running the networks here who have the children. It's indisputable evidence that Department of Homeland Security has transnational criminal organizations on the TOC watch list, some of who got their fingerprints here in Washington, D.C. and neighboring areas are sponsoring the children. It's indisputable.
You mentioned too, debt bondage. What do you mean when you say debt bondage, and who does the money go to?
So the money goes to the trafficker who ultimately brings them here. The New York Times actually showed, I think, Hannah Dreyer did an amazing expose where she actually showed the debt page of the child, how much the child had to pay for food, how much the child had to pay for rent, all of those things.
So the administration is really, we're engaged in creating slavery. We are trafficking slaves to this country.
Absolutely. There is no doubt. We have created a pull, and because this criminal element tragically views children as a commodity, they see us as the middleman because we're paying the flight directly to the end user, the trafficker.
I remember I was at Fort Bliss, the emergency intake center. I mentioned this last week in a hearing, and I was there as they were shipping kids on buses all over the country. And I actually asked the admiral running the place, I said, are we doing background checks? We're sending these kids to Google addresses. And he's like, no, we're just building the bus as we drive it. And so they were just shipping children, American taxpayers, basically. We're trafficking children.
Yes.
And making the cartel wealthy in the process and creating a bunch of minors in bad situations.
Yes.
All praises and glory to Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai Bahasham Ha Rakah Kodash, double honors to our apostle elders which rule great millstone while, and shalom to the hopeful elect of the nation of Israel. May you endure into the end. Shalom. Wa Abba Babal. So as you heard that video, you know, it's in the know, it's in the open that America is trafficking children, all right? And those children are majority Israelite, so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native American Indians, which have been scattered throughout the world in slavery and were subject to payment to our enemy. Our enemy is the other nations, starting with that so-called white race, which are the red devils the Bible speaks of. All right? And it says that in the scriptures, it prophesies of the downfall of this so-called white race, the wicked that rule the world. It says in Revelation 18 verse 9, and as you can see, Esau, the so-called white race, they labeled this, you know, they put that little label in black. It says, lament for Babylon. All right, which is talking about the heathen lamenting for the destruction of Babylon, which is America, which is going to go into perdition after they try to implant the whole entire world with an implantable microchip. Alright, for buying and selling. It says in verse 9, and the kings of the earth who have committed fornication and lived deliciously with her, talking about America, shall bewail her and lament for her when they shall see the smoke of her burning, which America is going to be destroyed with 200 million nuclear missiles. It says, standing afar off for the fear of her torment. The torment is because America is going to be turned into a lake of fire, saying, Allah's, Allah's, which is an expression of grief. That great city, which is America, called Babylon, is also known as spiritual Egypt, because the slavery and spiritual sodomy. Spiritual sodomy, because of the sodomy it promotes. It says, that mighty city, for in 1 hour is thy judgment come. So it's only going to take 1 hour for America to be destroyed. And the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buyeth their merchandise anymore. The merchandise of gold and silver and precious stones. Now I'm going to just jump to the point. You can read all this for yourself. Right here at the bottom it says, and horses and chariots and slaves and souls of men. Alright? So they got slaves that they're trafficking. The whole society is slavery, but they're literally trafficking Jake in slavery. Alright, in cages, on ships, and planes, and cars. And they're sending them as not just as slaves, but sex slaves, to perverts. Dicing them up, using their organs, drinking their blood. Right? Committing satanic rituals with their flesh. And if they live, they're being turned out. They're being taught to be wicked. Alright, so the Lord has to destroy this so-called white man, the red devil the Bible speaks of. Alright? It says in Revelation 13, verse 9, if any man have an ear, let him hear. Right? So if you understand what I'm, speaking of through the Holy Scriptures about this red devil and his future, that it has to be, destruction. He has to be made extinct, because as long as he's in the power seat, he's always going to promote wickedness. Alright, but he's too powerful for anyone to take down. That's why Yahweh Ba'asham Yahushai is going to take this red devil down and all his allies, which are the heathen, which they're under UN, and then you got the European Union. Alright, which America is the whore that rides that beast. It says, he that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. So, no matter how you like it, you red devils are going to go into slavery under the Israelites. You have us in slavery today. In 2023, this is why we're sighing and crying, begging the Lord to fulfill all the prophecies so that we could be delivered from our slavery, which the Lord is going to deliver us after he allows this devil to fulfill his lot. Alright? But also he's going to give us the heathen, including that red devil, for they're going to give us, Yahweh and Yahushua is going to give us, the Israelites, the so-called white men and the other nations. He's going to give us those nations for slaves, because we've been slaves to the red devil, the so-called white man, Esau, Edom, and the other nations. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience. This is what we're waiting for. This is what we're suffering for. Right? We're suffering because we want the righteousness of Yahweh Ba'asham Yahushai. We want recompense. Right? We want to trouble them that troubled us. It says, and the faith, which we have the faith that it's going to be done at the return of Yahushai, of the saints, and it's only for the Israelites. The Israelites are the so-called Negroid and the indigenous people, which are also known as Hispanics or Latinos, all right, of North America, Central America, South America, and the Caribbean, which you even had Israelites, they were being collected off of the shores of West Africa, all right, because they were running from this red devil in 70 AD. And we've never, got away. We're in captivity today. They're still shipping Jake as a slave. All right, they're still selling us to each other as slaves. They're still killing us with their sword, whether it's the gun or whether they lynch you. I just in Texas, I believe, there was a woman, that was lynched in Texas in 2023. All right, you had two so-called black men that were molested by 6 so-called police officers that were so-called Caucasian. So we're still in hell. We're still in captivity under the other nations. But soon the Lord is going to give us those other nations as slaves. And we're going to get payback. Alright, that's why you're supposed to desire this. Because this is what is coming. It says in verse 5 of 2 Thessalonians chapter 1, which is a manifest token of the righteous judgment of Yahweh Ba'asham Yahushai, that ye may be counted worthy of the kingdom of Yahweh Ba'asham Yahushai, for which ye also suffer, seeing it is a righteous thing with Yahweh and his son Yahushai, to recompense tribulation to them that trouble you. And who troubles us? The so-called white race, the red devils, the wicked that rule the world, and the other nations. And to you who are troubled, you got the ability to see and to hear and understand. Well, you need to cleave to the house of Jacob, cleave to the prophets, so that you could grow in your awakening. All right, it says, when the Lord Yahushai shall be revealed from heaven with his mighty angels. All right, which that's our salvation. Yahweh Ba'asham Yahushai coming with the mighty angels. All right, it says, a flaming fire taking vengeance on them that know not Yahweh and that obey not the gospel of our Lord Yahushua HaMashiach, who shall be punished with everlasting destruction from the presence of the Lord and from the glory of his power. All right, just to see him is going to be painful for the majority of this world. All right, because as soon as they see him, some people are going to die just from the sight of seeing the Messiah, which is a so-called black man. In fact, let me get this. This is it's called a brainy quote. It's from Robert Kennedy, the quote of Robert Kennedy, and this is what the quote says, quote, but suppose God is black. What if we go to heaven and we all our lives have treated the Negro, that includes the so-called Latino and Native American Indian, as an inferior? So you treated us like we were below you, but we're greater than you. The Israelites are greater than the so-called white man, the Edomites. The so-called Negro is better than the so-called white man. The so-called Latino is better than the so-called white man. The so-called Native American Indian is better than the so-called white man. It says, and God is there, and we look up, and he is not white, which he's not. He's the so-called black man. So is his son, Yahushua. That's why when he came down, you hung him from a tree. Which you say you crucified him, but it's the same thing. You hung him from a tree. What then is our response? Right? What then is our response? Which you could hear about the response of the rich man. Go to into the speaking of the rich man and Lazarus. We received evil in all our lives, and now we're about to receive good. You're about to receive evil, and your whole life you received good. You've been rich. You've ate of the fatness of the earth. You rule the world with your sword. So now it's the end of the so-called white man's reign of terror, and it's about to begin the Israelite reign of terror, right? Which we're going to terrorize the other nations just like they done unto us. Isaiah 3, verse 10, say ye to the righteous, which are the prophets of Israel, starting with the head apostles of Great Millstone all the way down to the lowest prophet that follows the same suit and correct doctrine. It says, say ye to the righteous that it shall be well with him, for they shall eat the fruit of their doings, which the Lord is with us, and he's going to deliver us. Whether we live or whether we die, we're going to be all right. But for you so-called Caucasians, it says, woe unto the wicked. You are the wicked nation, the Edomites, the so-called white race. Look at your track record. It says, it shall be ill with him. It's going to be bad for you. It's going to be evil because of all the bloodshed, of all the stealing, of all the lying. You got to pay for it. Not just from the Israelite, but even from the other nations you stole from. It says, for the reward of his hands shall be given him, which the Lord is going to make you the prey of the world. Every nation, right? There's 18 nations, and you're going to have 17 of them wanting to destroy you, which eventually you're going to be made extinct. All right, Isaiah 14:21. Prepare slaughter for his sons, which we're doing now by telling you your judgment. We're preparing you what's coming. We're telling you through prophecy what's going to happen to you and your entire race. Whether you're an Edomite or another nation of the heathens, we're telling you that you're going to be destroyed, right? Your authority is going to be removed from you, and you're going to be enslaved under the Israelites for 1,000 years. After that 1,000 years, the so-called white race, the biblical Edomites, the wicked that corrupted the world with their wickedness, is going to be made extinct, and the other nations are going to be tributary to Israel for eternity. It says, prepare slaughter for his sons for this generation, for the iniquity of their fathers, for the history that you've done. Because the truth is, reincarnation, you are your forefathers. Alright? It says that they do not rise nor possess the land nor fill the face of the world with cities. Because look what you've done. Look at the state of the world. So the Lord don't want you back. You know, he don't even want a small group of you. He wants the whole race of the so-called white man, which is the red devil, the wicked. He wants the whole entire race obliterated. Alright, one last scripture, Lord willing. If not, hey, the Spirit's rolling, so let's roll with it. It says in Obadiah, and verse 9, it says, Thy mighty men, O T-man, shall be dismayed, to the end that everyone of the mount of Esau, so everyone of the nation of Esau is the forefather of the so-called white race, may be cut off by slaughter. You see that? Every Edomite, male, woman, child, senior citizen, it don't matter. For thy violence, for what you've done violently against thy brother Jacob. Jacob is the so-called Negro, Latino, and Native American Indian of North America, Central America, South America, and the Caribbeans, all right, which we've been scattered throughout the world in slavery. It says, shame shall cover thee, and thou shalt be cut off forever, which eventually you're going to be made extinct, but you're not going to get no mercy. You ain't going to get water, you ain't going to get shelter, you ain't going to get prosperity, you're not going to get nothing. The only thing you're going to get is the Sabbath day that you are allowed to rest. That's it. Or the holy days that we have. You're going to be allowed to rest as we're commanded through our power, Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai, to keep that day holy. But other than that, we're going to be on you like white on rice, like flies on shit. There ain't going to be no let up on you. And if you get a moment of breath from the Israelites, you got the other nations to deal with. So, it's not a good time to be an Edomite. It's not a good time to be a proud-ass cracker. All praises and glory to Yahweh, B'Hashem Yahushai, B'Hashem HaRakah Kodash. Double honors to our apostle elders, which rule Great Millstone Wow, and shalom to the elect. Endure, brothers, above the ball.